Yeah, I actually have a question that I was hoping to ask you on Thursday when you were on John's channel, but you already had left when I hopped on. But the question that I have is in regards to the Brit Mila for babies. So my wife is expecting. My wife and I are expecting, and basically, I've been doing some shopping for some Moels, and I'm wondering, is there anything against halacha for having a female Moel or a woman?
There's nothing against halakha for a woman to perform the circumcision, although I've never heard it done, at least in modern day Judaism. I think in Yemenite communities it's been done. Circumcision is not such a big act like it is today in the Jewish world. In more traditional communities like in Morocco, Syria, and places like this, people just did it. The vast majority of cases, the father would do it. It's not so difficult to circumcise, especially with the tools that they've developed. The average moil uses this little clip that any of you guys could order online that kind of ensures you cut enough and don't cut too much. And I've seen it done a bunch of times, especially on my son. But as far as I know, a woman is able to circumcise. I mean, heck, Torah says that it was Zipporah who mauled her son. Halakha doesn't prohibit it. Not just that, a woman could also be a shochet. She could slaughter animals. I know that's not seen today, but she could.
What does what does the whole ceremony, what is it supposed to look like? Because this is my first child and I'm having a son, obviously. So I'm wondering, what does the whole ceremony is supposed to look like?
The way it's done nowadays is not necessarily how halakha requires it to be done. It's done with what's called a sandek. So a sandek, it's like an honor that you give someone that holds the baby while the circumcision is taking place. This is equivalent, at least in the modern day world, to the godfather, to the Christian godfather. They set a special seat for this guy. He's the one who holds the baby when they do the circumcision. You guys go to my channel and see when my son was circumcised, and that shows the whole ceremony. It's a quick thing. I'm talking about like a 5-minute thing.
They did it on Seinfeld.
Right, when Kramer ran with the baby because he thought, like many Jews believe, that circumcision is a form of mutilation of the body. There's many Jews who are not just don't get circumcised, they encourage people not to circumcise. So.
Another thing that's done nowadays is the notion of a shalom zachor. So a shalom zachor is really an Ashkenazi practice tied to Kabbalah or mysticism, that the Friday night after a baby is born, people get together at the parent's house and they have snacks and they daven, and it's really to protect the child from demons, ultimately from the Yetzer Hara. And it's tied to the medrash that teaches that a child is taught all of Torah while in the womb, and then the angel taps him on the lips and he forgets everything. This is really a shiva for the child. This is why supposedly, according to Mekubalim, children get circumcised on the 8th day, because they have to go through a time of shiva because of the learning they forgot. And the demons are there to make sure that he doesn't start up again and learn that Torah that was lost. It sounds interesting as long as you don't take it seriously. But yeah, that's commonly done.
Well, no, the interesting thing is it turns out that my pediatrician for my son was a Moel, and I didn't even know it until later on, until he got circumcised.
Pretty sure that it's just like being a chazan or a shochet. You don't need smicha to be a shochet or a chazan, although like they developed it now. Now they give you smicha to be a cantor, and they give you what's called a Kabbalah to be a shochet.
Just stay away from the Kabbalistic Moels, right? Because what they do.
Well, that's not a Kabbalistic thing.
No, I mean the whole, I don't even want to talk.
Metzitza bepeh, which is the procedure that the moil sucks on the baby's little thing, right? No, but that's not Hasidish.
No?
That's how the bulk, more Haredim than anything do it, but it's not a Kabbalistic thing. Haredi Jews in general, who do it in a traditional manner, that's the way they do it. The way they did it for my son and the way they do it for most in the modern Orthodox world is that they use like a little suction thing, because that actually serves a purpose.
It helps the blood.
Right. Coagulate the blood in some way. They pour cumin on it. That also helps. But it's not a Kabbalistic thing. This is how it's brought down in the Gemara. This is how it's brought down in the Rambam. It's just back then, they didn't have TikTok and they didn't have YouTube and they didn't have every person making fun of things that they don't commonly see as backward and primitive. The real issue is the transmission of herpes. That's not what most people make fun of it for.
Yeah, that's what I read in an article, that this one guy was spreading that around.
I heard about this. There was one mohel that was sick, and then he was getting many. I think there was even a baby that died. Yes, I mean, I would encourage to do it the other way, although it doesn't invalidate. If you do it the traditional way, it's still valid. Now, someone could say, well, it's not healthy, and according to the Jewish law, everything has to be according to health. I think that notion is blown out of proportion. The idea that, yes, we're giving the mitzvot to live by them, but that's not what the Torah says. Torah says live in the sense that will flourish and prosper in the land. Not that if something in some way threatens your life, you're not supposed to do it, or it's against Jewish law to do it. I've seen many people, heck, especially nowadays, with this coronavirus, there's many women who just skipped going to the mikvah. That's absurd, because according to Jewish law, there's no way around it, especially when you can just go to the beach. The average mohel uses a little suction thing. It looks like a syringe. Now, if you guys can't get a mohel to do a circumcision for your kids, you guys could always just do it through a hospital and then do a hatafas dam bris to elevate it. But that's even a machloket. The whole notion of taking a drop of blood out, even for someone who converts, is not clear cut. There's a disagreement in the Talmud if that's even necessary. So some say like, hey, you're circumcised. You don't need to take the drop of blood. I know that's how Shulchan Aruch paskins and how the Rambam teaches that the law goes. But if you don't do it, it's valid circumcision. Yeah.
Would you have to say the blessing afterwards if you do a conversion, if you're already circumcised?
No. There's no bracha for hatafas dam bris. And also, you don't need the Beit Din to see the drop of blood, as long as the person who's doing it sees it. There's many people who do it differently. Now, maybe because it's not set in stone, there's more like wiggle room in how people could do it. As someone who's performed hundreds of conversions, possibly thousands, I always get the other guy to do that. I'm not into, Anyway, the way it's done, the drop of blood, it's not you're walking in there with a knife or switchblade. People usually use the diabetic lance. You guys ever seen it?
Yeah, it's like it's like a push needle. Like you just
it's like a little gun. It's spring loaded, just like a pen. You press the top of it, and it, no pun intended, it pricks it. They take a blood and they soak it up with a little piece of white cloth, and they'll say drop of blood, that it's acknowledged.
Yeah, that's what they did for me, and they actually did a bracha. Interestingly, like before it was done, when I converted.
Another reason that bracha is problematic is that hatafat dam brit is typically done in the bathroom, and people are not used to saying brachot in the Beit HaKisei in the bathroom. Also, because it's a machloket by Chazal, if it's even necessary, the principle suffix bracha lekula should really apply. But we typically do what most people do, just so no questions arise.